Right. So welcome everybody. This morning we're going to be talking about how we can look at modernising operations in a not-for-profit world in particular. We'll look at things like industries like aged care and generally in the not-for-profit, and we're going to have a look at some of the challenges we see across those that sector, and then the different people that are involved in delivering not-for-profit services. And then we're going to have a look at maybe some of the cloud solutions that can help us address those, right? But let me first of all welcome our speakers. Right, so today we have got Emma and Claire with us. Emma, would you like to introduce yourself first, and then I'll ask Claire to do the same.
Yeah, sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. So Emma Tomlin, and I work in the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team. And my role is to build out an ecosystem of partners across the Asia region that support nonprofits in using Microsoft technologies.
And Claire, do you want to say hi too?
Yes, thanks, Paul. So Claire Roberts, I'm a senior account manager at Cubesys, and I work with all of our customers trying to bring innovative solutions to them, and really happy to meet you all today.
Thank you guys. So just some housekeeping before we get going, and we'll talk about the agenda in a bit more detail. This is a discussion format. We do like people to put questions in chat, and I'm happy to address things that come up, so please do stop and ask us questions. We will of course answer those as we can. We do record this session, so it will be available after on our website, and we can post that around, and we'll send you all the content and things there. Right. Okay. So what are we going to dive into today? Well, the way we thought we'd structure this is I'm going to ask Emma to talk about how Microsoft are investing in the not-for-profit space. We're aware of that investment from Microsoft and how it works, and in particular what the announcements around what's happened in Australia this year. So it'd be fantastic to hear about that. And then we thought we'd highlight some of the issues that you're probably facing and are common across the industry. Right, cybersecurity always top of mind. How we're dealing with a very transient workforce and the number of people coming and going, particularly in not-for-profit, we see that a lot, right? So volunteers and people joining and leaving the organisation. There's a natural attrition rate with that. We'll talk about remote work and the challenges of remote work and allowing those frontline workers to get access to systems and some of the challenges we see there. And then, of course, we couldn't, at this day and age, in the current climate, we couldn't possibly not finish off by talking about AI and the impact that it's going to have in there. So we've got a few slides at the end there where we'll talk about how AI is starting to impact our lives and industry. But might start by Emma asking you to talk a little bit about what Microsoft are doing in the not-for-profit space, how you organise yourself, how you reinvest, and all the things that are happening, particularly in Australia as well. Right? So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. So I want to start off, one of the questions that I'm probably asked the most by customers is, what is Microsoft's commitment not only to Australia but also to the non-profit sector? And so I just wanted to start with a couple of news articles from the end of last year. I'm not sure if everyone's seen these on the call, but we will send the link round afterwards. But Microsoft has just made the single biggest investment it's ever made as an organisation in Australia. And they're investing $5 billion in computing capacity and capability. And some of the things that are really interesting about this announcement, one of them is around the tech-related jobs. So working with the Australian government, there's a shared commitment to create and train 1.2 million people into tech-related jobs over the coming years. And then the second thing that's really important about this announcement is the Microsoft Australian Signals Directorate Cyber Shield. So this is thinking about a shield around Australia as a country to protect organisations, particularly non-profits and organisations that have challenges around their security posture. If we look at what's happening today, there's 76,000 reports every 7 minutes across FY22. And so Microsoft investing alongside the Australian government to create this shield will actually help support and protect organisations. And so it's really, really important for us to think about the investment that Microsoft's making, not only as an organisation into Australia, but also thinking about non-profits as well.
That's great, and I did see those announcements, Emma. It was interesting to see the involvement of New South Wales TAFE, right? So
yes,
one of the challenges is for most organisations is just the pool of talent around IT, right? So that, and it's great to see that they were bringing up the academies, I think there was a special data center academy that was being formed, right, in Australia.
Correct. Yeah, they're looking to the initial kickoff of the data center academy is looking to train 3,000 students, which is fantastic.
Yeah, good things to hear. And glad you mentioned the Australian Signals Directorate as well. Obviously keen, and one of the things we like to do with our clients is make sure that we help organizations get to at least level 1 in the Essential 8 program that the directorate put out, right? And that standard is super important. I mean, a lot of that is just basic housekeeping, but it's important, and it's really surprising quite often how many people are missing some of those pieces, those 8 pieces of the puzzle. So that's good to see as well. Cool. Let me just move on then to the next slide. Do you want to dive into a bit more about the
I think it's good because I don't think everyone's really aware of the Tech for Social Impact team. So we have a completely separate business unit globally at Microsoft that sits in an area called Microsoft Philanthropies, and Tech for Social Impact is the business unit within Microsoft Philanthropies that is 100% dedicated to the success of nonprofits globally. And so our mission statement is to empower every nonprofit and mission-driven organization with Microsoft technology to help accelerate social good. And what that really means is it's working with organizations like Cubesys to support nonprofits in the different regions around the world. And it's just about helping you get the most out of your Microsoft technology. So whether that's from discounted licensing and grants and offers, or whether it's building out an ecosystem of partners that understand how to support a nonprofit and the type of technology that you're looking to use. Tech for Social Impact is the business unit at Microsoft that does that. And I think as we move on to the next slide, you'll see some of the metrics around our impact and what we've been doing. And you can really see here in the last 2023, $3.8 billion of grants globally. So that's including things like discounting off the software. You can see there we also have a Microsoft program, Microsoft Give, and you can see there that 105,000 Microsoft employees with company matching supported 35,000 nonprofits in 116 countries. So we have this amazing kind of giving month at Microsoft that happens every year, and everyone really gets behind Microsoft Philanthropies and supports nonprofits. And then you can see there that we've got about 325,000 nonprofits globally that we're supporting. We actually want to increase that. I think Justin, who's our exec, has said he wants to see it get up to 500,000. So Microsoft is really committed to supporting this sector, and we want to make sure that we are delivering the right grants and discounted software and services with our partners to just make sure that the technology is supporting the mission outcomes of organizations in the different regions.
I know we've at Cubesys, we've been working with your team, Emma, for probably 5 or 6 years now, and we've been around for like 11 years working with large enterprises and helping them get the best out of the Microsoft Cloud. And it's really it's sort of very fulfilling to be able to do that with a not-for-profit space, and it's awesome to be able to bring some of our skills and capabilities to people that maybe couldn't always afford to use partners like us, or are not aware of what the technology can do to them, for them, right? I think I look at that platform in M365, for example, the number of times I go into clients and they're not really leveraging the full benefits of that, and it's just knowledge and capability and time to be able to do that. And what your team allows, and because of that funding model that you've got, it allows partners like us to come along and help, right, and lift the game. So I think it's fantastic that we get discounted licensing for not-for-profits, and that's wonderful. But if you're not leveraging the capabilities of that platform and that license that you own, then you're missing a trick, right? And that's where hopefully we can come in and do that. And we have our own discounting scheme as well for not-for-profits, so that we can join in and help feed back into the community, right?
Definitely.
Cool. Let's see, what else did you have for us there?
I think the final thing that I just wanted to talk about, I mean, we see this every day. It's unfathomable what's going on in the world at the moment. And the one thing that is consistent around the globe is that the nonprofits and the charities are the first responders. They are the ones that are out there in the trenches, on the front line, providing aid, supporting people. If we look at things in Australia, like the floods and the fires that happen on a far too regular basis. And so the role that nonprofits play and their importance as we continue to kind of navigate this incredibly chaotic world that we are currently all living in is becoming more and more prevalent and more important to people in countries. And so we want to make sure that when there is a disaster, as an example, if there is a flood in a region in Australia, those non-profits have the technology and it's the backbone of their organisation to help them respond, get the right information to the right frontline workers and the first responders to make sure that the technology is really supporting the impact of those non-profits, because the way things are going, the world is just becoming more and more chaotic. So we want to ensure that that technology is really the foundation of supporting all of those non-profits and charities around the world as we are navigating this kind of rapidly changing global landscape that we're all in today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and that's probably the next slide we brought up was these. We are in very dynamic times, right? And there's a number of challenges. So if we just sort of switch gear and start to sort of articulate some of those challenges we're facing, I think you're dead right. Often the not-for-profits are front and centre of that, and there's those frontline workers, and that's why we've sort of focused on a couple of those areas. But obviously we see all sorts of challenges across our businesses and community at the moment. I know energy prices are shifting and changing. I was recently at a conference overseas talking to some of my UK compatriots, and they were talking about the energy prices and the carbon footprint, the CO2 footprint challenges they've got from government there, really driving some of the technology decisions they're making, moving back to some technologies like thin clients that have got a longer lifespan and lower power draw, so that they actually were back to using sort of virtual desktops and things, because that's a better economic solution, and it lined up to those power costs and the carbon footprint of the device, right? So they were changing a lot of where they were tackling things. And obviously, we're very aware of the geopolitical situation at the moment. Disruptions in supply chain is a challenge, right? And if you think about what's happening with the shipping lanes at the moment, that's another challenge. I know a lot of things going into Europe are very impacted by that. So again, they were seeing some different challenges in their area, right? That geopolitical situation would have. And then of course we've got our as we've already touched on, the talent shortage, finding people with the right skills and capabilities, right, and to bring into the organisation and to lift the game. We've over the last, if I look at the last 10 years that I've been at Cubesys, and when we formed Cubesys, we started with on-prem technologies, and cloud was just really getting going. And now you look back and you would not consider doing anything without cloud. Cloud's first choice, and it is where we're driving and moving technology. But that needs a whole lot of skill sets. And what we often find at Cubesys when we're going and bring that bleeding edge technology and capabilities and turn things on for people, it's then how do you operationalize that, and how do you look after it for the next 2-3 years? You've got to upskill people and train people, and there's a whole different mindset needed, not just technical skills, right, that you need to bring to the table. So these are all challenges that we see inside our organizations.
Yeah, and I don't think complexity is going to get simpler. I think we're moving into a more and more complex society as a whole, and so those business complexities are getting more challenging and becoming more complex. And it's which decision is right for your business, and what is the best strategy for you as an organisation moving forward.
Yeah, and it's going to keep happening at an ever increasing pace. And we're going to talk about pace of technology change later in the presentation deck, and it is really phenomenal to see how certain technologies that have been very impactful to us in society, how fast they're moving, right? And so when the new technology comes out, the adoption rate is just accelerated phenomenally, right? So the time for individuals to skill up and train up and get the best out of that is just shortening all the time and becoming more and more challenging. Of course, we couldn't have a challenge without talking about security, and you touched on that earlier, and the investment that the Australian government and Microsoft are making in putting that ring fence around Australia. It's everywhere and impacts every organisation, and needs to be top of mind, and always is, right? All of our conversation with clients are definitely centred around, or certainly include a cyber security element. I don't know, Claire, do you want to add any comments to that? I'll get you involved in the conversation.
Yeah, look, I think there are different security challenges all the time, and we hear lots of headlines. I think the challenge is how to react to them, and in certainly in the not-for-profit sector, you know, the budgets available to spend on security are not necessarily always there. And I guess this is where the Microsoft technology really supports not-for-profit organizations, because you know, it's inbuilt into all the solutions that Microsoft has. You know, its cloud solutions have inbuilt security, and obviously Office 365 and Entra identity are all things that help support organizations.
I think you're dead right, and again, it's that awareness of the capability in our organizations that's important. I mean, if you'd have looked back 10, 15 years ago, none of us would have considered Microsoft as a security business. Satya absolutely changed that and made it a central mandate to Cubesys, to Microsoft, in that they can't have cloud systems unless you've got trust, and that trust means that we need to be secure. And so Microsoft, I think, spend well over $1 billion. Emma, you might remember this. I'm trying to remember back from a presentation from Satya on security every year. And what's really impressive, I sit back and think about that as a technologist, is that it'd be hard to beat Microsoft when it comes to security in the future, because the number of signals across the number of clients and across the number of platforms that they have is always going to be in like, they're going to have the best data, basically, to be able to do security and provide security services. And what we're seeing is that's coming to fruition now with Defender across the different platforms, and Sentinel and things. Being able to see what's happening and predict and get in front of the curve is something that's super important in modern environments, and Microsoft do an excellent job of that now, right? And so that's over that 10, 15 years, we've seen that change completely, right? And now I couldn't imagine going to any of our clients without recommending using Microsoft Security first, and then looking at where there may be some gaps, or you want a second set of eyes, external technology stack to help you sort of analyze your security posture. And so it's always going to start with and be dependent upon Microsoft first, and then it's where else we might need something.
Yeah,
so
and I think just to add to that, I know we're going to touch on AI later, but when you look at the vendors, Microsoft is the only vendor that has security as part of its responsible AI pillar. So we've included security as a pillar as part of our generative AI strategy and thinking about responsible AI, and that's something because it's just so intrinsic to the organization. Like you can't be using these technologies without that foundational layer of security there to ensure that you're safeguarding your platform and you're safeguarding your customers and your customer data.
Maybe I'll save some anecdotes for the productivity we get around and how we respond to security incidents in an AI world. I know we've got that at the end of the presentation, talking about productivity. What we can do with AI in security is really quite phenomenal, right? And the gains we get from that are great. So maybe keep that one for a bit later on. The next slide, we look at some numbers, and I am focused in on the aged care sector here a little bit, because I think it's a great example of what we're seeing across other areas as well. Is just the change, right? So in that industry, we're seeing the amount of change that's happening at such an increased pace. The population's aging for them, right? So the number of people that need aged care is growing dramatically. And look, if you see some of those numbers there that I've highlighted, like the 360% increases, like they're huge numbers. And so how do we pivot, and how do we go up, and how do we manage those sort of changes and that growth, right? And having so many more people in that elder sector, and then on top of that, right, we've got the shortage of workers in that area, and I think that's something that hits not-for-profits across the board. You talked about those frontline workers and first responders and things, like having people available and having them in your organization and trained and with the right information so they can do the job that they're supposed to do. All those are like big challenges, right? And aged care exemplifies that, right? The amount of turnover they see in staff there is because the casual care staff is phenomenal, right? And it's very hard for those organizations to manage with. And then we start thinking about where technology would have an impact. And I think it's as an IT professional, it's like I've always felt that IT is a service to the business, right, and to the organization they're working in. and it's really important that they have a great experience with that. And I don't think we always do. Sometimes those cybersecurity requirements or defunct or aging systems mean that we don't always get the best experience for users. And if you look at the corporate and organizational world versus what we see as consumers at home and how easy it is to be using iPads and systems like that, we've got to catch up and make sure that they're compatible. Otherwise, we're not going to retain staff, right? And they're going to get frustrated with the systems and want to move on elsewhere where maybe the IT is better, right? I think it's really important that we focus on having the right information and the right systems that are easy to use, right? And available to them where they need them, right? So any comments on that from Claire or Emma?
I think just from my side, oh, sorry, go on, Claire.
I was just going to say, I think, a lot of similar, worker shortage, impacts are the same in general across not-for-profit. I don't think it is just aged care, but I don't know that I've got some very specific stats on that. But yeah, definitely.
It was quite difficult to find some of the stats, and I knew I had some from aged care, so I think they are great examples of what's happening more broadly, right? And it just emphasised that. But Emma, you had a comment on that?
I was just going to say, in terms of kind of the non-profit sector, one of the stats that I do have on hand is that when we think about volunteers, we've actually lost 300,000 volunteers from the sector over the last 3 years. So even in terms of worker shortages, there's definitely a trend around volunteer shortages as well. A lot of that was obviously down to things like COVID, but we're not seeing the bounce back post-COVID of those volunteers coming back into the non-profit. So I think as a general kind of theme, like people and human shortages in terms of skills and capability gaps and support is an area that is affecting all levels of non-profits in all industries. The other thing just to call out as well is around donor behaviour. So I know that a lot of non-profits are seeing a change in the donor behaviour of their donors because of things like the cost of living crisis that's happening at the moment. So again, I think some of the economic pressures are putting a different set of challenges onto these organisations, whether they're in healthcare or whether they're a more traditional non-profit or charity.
Yeah, I think you're right, and there's prompted me or reminded me of a not-for-profit that I've been working with in the last couple of weeks, where their volunteers man call centres, right, and they respond on those call centres, and it's really been quite challenging for them to make sure that they stay engaged and make sure the systems work for all of those volunteers across whatever technology they've got at home, because they're working remotely predominantly in that things, but also then aligning to that last point around the regulatory changes, right? So the amount of compliance and security that we need across our systems when we're talking about individuals' data and personal information is really, really important, right? And that's definitely changed a lot over the last few years. The focus and emphasis on that and making sure that the systems are controlling personal information really carefully, right, is important. And it's hard for some of these not-for-profit organisations to catch up and be able to have the right systems in place to be able to, and processes to do that, right? And again, that's something maybe where the Microsoft technology stack can help, because the built-in capabilities that we bring to the table help solve some of those problems, right? And it's really about configuring those systems to work best for you and your organization, not building them from scratch, right? And that's a common thing with cloud, is that we're now configuring and so we can move really, really fast and deliver projects really quickly, and it's about having the knowledge to get the best out of that configuration. Microsoft obviously builds systems that work for thousands of organizations across the planet, right? And they're all unique and different. So what we need to be able to do, and that's the skills that partners like us bring to the table, is making sure we can configure that quickly to meet your business requirement, right? And we obviously do look for patterns and things. So if we see regularly patterns across an industry, then we can bring that to the table as well and bring that knowledge there. So again, speed up the adoption, right, and help. Let's just talk a little bit, and I might point at you, Claire, to talk a little bit about frontline workers, because as we mentioned already, frontline workers, they're very prevalent in not-for-profits, and they're the first ones to respond, right? And often in very difficult situations. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the challenge is that there's such a variety of roles in not-for-profits. I mean, you've got everything from healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, to homeless shelter staff. Such a diverse skill set. And you know, the access that they need to systems can be quite challenging. I mean, the not-for-profit that we were talking to last week, Paul, that you mentioned, with the call centre staff, I mean, they have half of their volunteers accessing systems on their personal devices. So that security and that access solution is absolutely essential. And, you know, we see this across the board. I mean, just to reiterate some of the things that Emma and you've talked about, Paul, you know, there's 80% of frontline workers, while saying they're happy with their, you know, pay, they're facing financial challenges due to the cost of living. So it's causing, you know, high attrition rates, and that's eating into the budgets of the not-for-profits as well, because they're having to retrain staff and rehiring, and it's really challenging. And then, so to talk about that, we need to have technology that's going to support them and that's going to be cost effective. And we need to be able to give them access, you know, through simple interfaces, and do that securely.
Well, maybe we pivot a little bit and start thinking now about how we can answer some of these challenges, right? Or if I just jump to some of the remote work challenges as well that we're seeing. You mentioned there, people wanting to work from home and working on their own devices, and how do we make that scalable, and how do we implement solutions that we can know that are secure and can be used anywhere, right? So maybe we can start now talking about how we solve some of these problems. No, we're going to bring now a couple of different technical areas to the table, and we'll talk about how we could use virtual desktops in a number of these situations and why they're beneficial. We'll talk about the onboarding challenge, and then we'll jump into some AI and where that's starting to see some benefits. So if we start with really this virtual desktop solution, right, that we've been very prevalent in promoting at Cubesys, and there's lots of reasons for that, right? And AVD and virtual desktops are really having a re-emergence in the industry, right? Because the cost point and the control of costs has gone down. When we used to do VDI on premise and in old technology stacks, like legacy ones like Citrix and VMware, they're very cost prohibitive, they were very clunky, there were those limitations in capacity, and a lot of those problems have been solved by using cloud-based VDI, and Microsoft are absolutely leading the way in this, right? There's a Gartner chart for you, and the lovely Magic Quadrant. Microsoft are way ahead right at the moment, right? They're right up the top of it, and that's right, because they've combined a bunch of the technology they've had on hand for many years, and so Windows 10 and Windows 11, that whole operating system thing, and then moved it to the cloud and made it modern, right? Around that, we've obviously got and one of the key points for VDI is the security posture that you can sort of automatically have out the box using existing well, for most clients, existing Microsoft 365 capabilities on the front of the thing. So when we authenticate into AVD, we are using multi-factor authentication and client access rules that are based on what we're using for Office 365. We leverage those, but then we can give all those old legacy corporate apps that same sort of level of security and provide a desktop, and that desktop can then be leveraged in any number of situations, right? So the remote call desk people we talked about, Claire, with that client, right? That's what they're looking at, right? And what AVD does is allow you to have that full organizational corporate security posture, right? As if you're working at your desk in a secure building, in a secure network, but have that anywhere in the world for any sort of, and on any device. So we can be mobile, we can be talking to people we're supporting in their homes and have that over a 5G connection on a device, right? So we're able to give that full access to all the corporate information, all the corporate applications safely and securely anywhere, anytime, and that has a big impact, right? And on top of that, some of the things we talked about earlier was that consistency of experience and good experience for the carers and the first frontline workers and first responders, having that ability to be able to have a consistent experience wherever they log on, right, is again key, and is something that AVD provides to our client base, right? So we've seen a big uptake in that, and then when we marry that with those cost and economic benefits of being flexible and being able to, you know, scale out the capability and then scale it back in, so you're only paying for what you need, being really, really powerful and impactful for a lot of industries, but particularly in not-for-profit, we've seen that. Do you want to add anything to that?
I think you've covered a lot of that. I just think going back to that, you know, simple login is probably one of the key things for the retention of those staff. And if you think about how expensive some of those resources are within the not-for-profit sector, you might have clinical consultants, people that are very expensive resources to the organisation. And so, you know, those 6 or 7 logs in a day in different areas of building or different environments could be costing them a lot of money. If you've got challenges logging in to systems, you know, it could be costing you hundreds of dollars a day in each individual that you actually, you know, employ in that sector. So it's very impactful having that simple, you know, user experience and with the familiar tools.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate that, the feedback that I get a lot from non-profits where they're in the more health side of the industries, so in terms of like aged care, residential care, or even medical research, workforce optimization is the #1 thing that comes out. And the ability to improve the inefficiencies that they have in line with things like the government mandates and the NDIS regulations around things like care minutes. So it's becoming more and more prevalent for these organisations to ensure that they have the right staff in the right place, delivering the right level of care at the right time. And so things like AVD can help enhance that frontline worker experience.
Absolutely, yeah. And you're dead right in healthcare. I've worked in that sector for a long time, right, 15 years, and some of the things we talked about was that log on time being down to sort of 10-15 seconds, because clinicians are in front of people all the time, right? And then they might be in different locations. They can't move the patient to them all the time, right? And so they would go to different terminals, and logging on and having a long log on process that might be 2 or 3 minutes is just impactful on their productivity. And if you add that up across, you know, nurses and doctors in a hospital over a day, that adds up to a lot of hours, right? So that really timely interaction, and that's where, again, virtual desktops come in. We can leave a session open and you can reconnect on different devices to the same point and get to the same data, right, and applications quickly. So we've seen that being very impactful. And another story that jumped into my head, Emma, when you mentioned earlier about the Australian fires and floods and things being a challenge. I know the not-for-profit in Victoria we're working with, they have to work across multiple disciplines. When there's a fire happening, there's not just the fire service that respond, there's SES, there's the police, there's ambulance, and they all need to get to this central set of information and processes and procedures and things. And we're helping them with AVD in doing B2B, so that they can have external parties access that data when and need, and in a secure and controlled manner, right? So that's another exciting project that they're working on. And those sort of things wouldn't be available if we weren't moving to cloud and leveraging the cloud technologies, right? And that's across Entra ID and then AVD, and now they're joined together. Which is a nice little segue into something else that we've seen as a challenge, right? So we've lots of volunteers, lots of staff movement in not-for-profits and things like aged care, that we had some pretty scary stats in there, and the amount of turnover of staff. We need to be really consistent and good at onboarding people, right? And I know from my previous life, onboarding systems and HR to IT systems has always been fraught with challenges and difficulties. And I remember implementing FIM that took 2 months and was an expensive product and needed lots of development work and customizations. But you fast forward to today, and some of the more recent announcements are off the back of Enter ID, and that move away from terminology of AAD to Enter ID was, I think, very strategical from Microsoft, because it is not just about the directory anymore. It's about a bunch of services that wrap around that. And I just wanted to highlight one that's available through the governance license that you add on to Enter. You can now, there's a full onboarding engine there that's configurable, right? So we can automate the onboarding and offboarding of staff, right? So both in and out, and that means we've got better coverage on compliance, and we don't miss steps, and they get a better experience, right? You can see from that graphic there that we can, send out the welcome email automatically and make sure that they're in the right groups and the systems are available for them from when they start, right? And it's not calling the help desk and going, I can't get to this, and how do I do that, right? We can work out a full flow of information and have manager and approval and all that. Now that's built into Enter. It's not something we have to go and buy. Is configurable, right, and usable. So just wanted to maybe make sure that people are aware that when we move to cloud, it's not starting from the basics of to lay foundations. The foundations are there for you. It's about how you can lift that up and use that in your business. Anything to add to that, Gail, before we talk about AI, right, and finish off our session with a bit of AI news? Right?
No, all good. Let's
see the exciting stuff. Well, let's start with some stats around AI, and maybe Emma, I'll get you to comment on that slide, because I know that's some Microsoft stats that we've got.
It is, yeah. So we do something called a Microsoft Work Trend Index every year, and this is basically where we go out and we survey all of our customers on what we're seeing in terms of productivity trends and productivity benchmarks in terms of people's sentiment. And so, as you can see here, the recent survey that we did at the end of 2023 was really talking about how AI-powered tools represent an enormous opportunity. And the thing that really stood out for me about the survey results wasn't necessarily people wondering about, is AI going to replace jobs, but really thinking about how AI can save time. And so that was something that came out, and you can see here 64% of people have struggled finding time and energy to get their work done. 70% of people want to delegate as much as possible to AI to lessen their workloads. And when we think about things like Copilot across the Office suite, I know that time and time again, it's really thinking about the ability for an organization to enable its staff to get access to information in a quicker way, in a more meaningful way that enables them to save time. And I know myself as an information worker, I've had Copilot since November, and it's saving me probably 3 to 4 hours a week just finding things. Those many hours I used to spend hunting around SharePoint sites and looking for documents and email and all those good things. So even just on a very, very basic level. So when we think about the opportunity for AI, and we can talk about how the industry is moving really quickly. For me, the number one thing that you need to take away as an organization when you think about generative AI technology is how it can save people in your organization time and help them access information in a more meaningful way, which means that they can be more productive and they can get more done in the 8 hours that we all have at work every day. And so that would be the big takeaway from me. But I don't know, Paul or Claire, if you've got any other comments on that.
Might let you go first, Claire, if you like. I've got a couple of comments.
Yeah, look, I agree. Look, I've been using Copilot, the Bing version as opposed to the internal version. It's just the time it saves to find information. And we work across a vast amount of Microsoft technology as a solution partner, and I'm not a technical person, I say. I'm not a technical person, but it really accelerates my access and the speed at which I get information back when I need to give succinct messages back to customers. They've given me a problem and I need to find an answer without going to my consultants and wasting their time. It's really, really powerful. So yeah, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think yes, the power of AI initially, I think, is not at all threatening jobs. It's about making us more efficient and more productive. Definitely, I've been using Copilot for a few weeks now, and it's like even just simple things like in a meeting being able to write notes, and it's amazing at writing notes and the actions that come out of that. Like, so you turn on the transcript capability in Teams, and it will then give you a set of actions afterwards. It's amazingly accurate, right? But it's other things like, you know, I've often in my role have to create presentations, and being able to point PowerPoint at a Word document, and so give me a presentation that summarizes that, please, it's not perfect, right? And it definitely needs you to give that finishing touch, but it saves so much time than starting on a blank page and giving you ideas, and it is just like having a personal assistant follow you around and save you time, right? So I think it's going to be interesting how that productivity increases. We also have coders internally at Cubesys, and I know they're looking at it to add notes to their code or to help them draft code that they then refine, and all that area is becoming really quite interesting, how it can supplement and add to people in their job. So I don't think it's all about replacing it. It really is about being able to make us more productive. Right? And you mentioned SharePoint and all that information and the searching around and finding. That's one of the first things I thought of when we first done that. We've got an internal initiative at Cubesys, so we were born in the cloud. All of our documentation is very nicely secured in SharePoint, and it's got lovely structure over here. And I go, but wouldn't it be great if I could just ask a chatbot a question and it would go and find me the right document or the right presentation, or where we've done that before? And so that we've actually got our developers looking at that at the moment, right? So hold fire, maybe Cubesys will have something to bring to the table where we can use that natural language query from Copilot and go and search all that great IP we've got in our company. And the challenge I set my developers, if we can make that work for us, then wouldn't it be great if we could take that to our clients and just put that layer over the front? So where my mind goes is, imagine a healthcare worker, I don't know, somebody in aged care that says somebody's fallen over. What's the procedure for me when somebody falls over? What forms do I need to fill out? Who do I need to speak to? What's the minute? Just being able to ask that question in natural language would be, I think, really, really powerful. And just to leverage all that corporate data and organizational data and bring it to the surface for people when they need it, where they need it.
Especially in those situations, Paul, where they're stressful, aren't they? You know, the frontline workers are in stressful situations. You know, if maybe someone's terribly injured, you know, all thought sort of goes to one side, doesn't it? And so to have that capability in a very simple, you know, way to access would be amazing.
Yeah, and I think that ability to ask that question in natural language is key to that, right? And so that's what we thought we would look at that internally. But I can see so many use cases for AI. We touched on security earlier, and the ability for us to respond to a cyber incident using AI and Copilot is amazing. We're playing with that internally, and just to be able to. When you have a cyber incident, you often need data, right? You need to know where you are so that you can know if you're secure and which devices need patching, for example, something very simple like that. We have to go back into our systems and build reports and ask, like, where's this reg key, or is this file available on the system, right? And we have to go and build those and check them against the database. What we saw with Copilot in the security space is that we could then query it and let it go and find that information for us inside of Intune and the other sources that it had available across the M365 platform. So again, that productivity went from something that might take, you know, an engineer a couple of hours to build a report and then go and run the report, and it would, you know, a day later we're still gathering data. In Copilot, we got it in minutes. We were getting the answers, and we knew specifically which devices we need to go and tackle. So once you've got that data in the platform, the ability to query it and really drag out what's useful was really quite powerful. Right? So you can see all these different use cases for AI across the organization. Right? Now I know we're getting up to time, but I did promise to show you a graph on the speed of adoption earlier on these type of technologies, and wow for AI, right? I mean, we look at how mobile phones, how impactful they are and how important they are to modern life and the internet as well, right? And that adoption rate was quite, well, you can see a curve there. AI has been phenomenal, right? And you can see maybe why when you start to play and use it, why that's the case, right? As we were just discussing. But any other comments on that? You know, it's surprising how steep that curve was, and 3 months to get up to 100 million people using.
That's incredible.
It's pretty impressive. Right? Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. But I was one of those early users, I must say.
Yeah, it's working out how we best make use of it. And I think what we'll find is lots of people will find different ways to make use of AI, right? And depending on your role and how you work in an individual, will have different ways to support you. All right, we might just round off by looking at that era of AI, and that again, just reiterating that productivity is where I think we'll first see that impact of AI in our day-to-day lives, that productivity, getting information, responding, articulating ourselves, just having that ability to quickly summarize things. I do that already with collateral inside of Cubesys, where I'll ask Copilot just to summarize a document, or tell me the meetings that I missed today and could you summarize them? Because the transcript's there, we can analyze that and give you a response that would otherwise take you a long time.
One of my favorite
using it, Emma? Yeah.
One of my favorite features is the summarize your inbox at the end of the day. So I tend to spend a lot of my life on back-to-back conference calls, and then you're kind of battling through your inbox at the end of the day to try and figure out what's important and what you need to respond to. And just that great little feature of summarize your inbox, and it just kind of tells you exactly what's important. So that 1 hour at the end of the day is now a 10-minute kind of check, just to make sure that I've not missed anything super urgent. And then I get the time back and I can go do me.
Nice.
It actually makes a license look really cost effective when you think about the productivity gains that you get in the organization.
The number of hours that you're saving very quickly adds up in terms of ROI. Yes,
I think I'll admit I was probably a little bit skeptical of that when I first started using it, but I couldn't agree more now, having used that. And I think I saw some stat somewhere in a survey asking people if they would take a voucher or take something other than having their AI assistant, and it was like 80% were going, no, give me the AI assistant. I don't want to do without it anymore. It was some really high number, and so they've been using it for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then they were asked if they would give it up. And I think I'd put myself in the same boat. I can't imagine not having it now. It'd be annoying, right? But finding the best ways to use it, I think, in each individual role is going to be interesting, right, across organizations. Cool. Well, I think maybe I know we're over time a little bit. Thank you, Esther, for posting a bunch of information in the chat there for people. And of course, this call is recorded and we'll follow up. And if you do have any questions for us, feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to come back to you and answer those. But maybe with that, I'll just thank our speakers. So thank you, Claire, and thank you, Emma, for coming along and talking to us today about how we can use cloud systems to innovate and move forward in not-for-profits.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.